Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Walkshow podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really excited about today's episode. I was joined by Misha Zarins, the producer of the Walkshow, and Chris Crabtree, who previously joined the show to talk about Total War Three Kingdoms. The three of us are lifelong Tool fans, and Tool is our favorite band, I would say, of all time. Tool has just recently announced a new tour, and we're actually going to see them this week in concert. Really excited about it, so we wanted to kind of jump on and talk about our love of Tool and talk about all the different things that we just find so great about it. Anyway, we had a ton of fun recording the episode. Hope you guys enjoy listening to it. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, today's show is produced, the music and artwork by Misha Zarins. Hey guys, super excited to talk to you today. We have some really interesting and exciting news. Tool is going back on tour starting, I think, in early May. Woo-hoo! That's when we're going to see them. So on the show today, we have two guests, which is a first for the show. Both of them you have heard before, though. The first guest we have is the producer, artist, and musician for the Walkshow podcast. That is Misha Zarins.
Hey, what's up?
And then the other guest you are also familiar with. He has joined me on the podcast where we talked about Total War Three Kingdoms, that PC strategy game. Chris Crabtree.
Howdy.
Thank you guys for joining. So yeah, I just found out on earlier this week that Tool was going on tour. I've heard rumors that an album's going to drop between May, July timeframe, but
right. Depending on whose tweet you go for.
Yeah, but it's been 13 years since an album came out, and that rumor didn't just come around for the first time this year. Right. So I didn't buy it because I just quit caring a long time ago because whatever. But now I believe it because the tour aligns exactly with that time frame, and the new album supposedly has been in the works for 13 years. So or whatever.
And now supposedly in mastering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think
which is the final stages of producing an album?
Yeah.
Mastering.
Do you think we'll get it before the show in St.
So
Louis?
I think we were talking about that, Walker, last night briefly, off mic. I think so, because it would be really weird for them to... They generally generate their set lists pretty early because Maynard likes to tailor the set list according to what his vocals can work with. He's obviously a kind of an older person. He's in his 50s, so he doesn't like to strain his vocals across a lot of different songs. There's some songs he sings really soft, and other songs he screams. So they don't consistently play those songs. So they orchestrate their set list around what the band feels comfortable to do, and specifically what he can sing. So it would make sense that they actually orchestrate their set list around songs that they're going to predetermine ahead of time. So they wouldn't just change it. They wouldn't drop the album halfway through the tour and then just start playing those songs. And it would be weird, maybe, I don't know, for them to just start playing those songs before the actual album had dropped and then still drop it halfway in between. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because the audience still expects all the hits and all the singles to be played.
I don't know. I mean, in previous, I've watched a lot of live shows on YouTube of Tool concerts, and the set list definitely wasn't a full album, or the set list wasn't just all new stuff that hadn't been released, but they definitely have played stuff before it's been on an album. There's stuff from the early '90s where their primary set list is Opiate tracks, but they're playing stuff from Undertow, but it's before Undertow's out. Opiate and Undertow being their first two albums. So it's possible that that the album doesn't come out before we see them, but that they're still playing the same set list that they will play even after it comes out that includes album tracks.
Right.
I hope, though, that it is all new.
Yeah.
And when we saw them in 2006, which I don't think that you didn't go to that one with us, but you were there. You were just one of the different people.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, in 2006, that was right after 10,000 Days came out, and that was all 10,000 Days. I don't know if they played. Maybe they played 46 and 2.
Well, they played Lateralis, the song.
Okay.
There was a few in there,
but it was mostly 10,000 Days. Yeah.
The light panels.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so as you can probably tell from our gushing, all of us super stoked, super excited. Misha
Super
went to the
fanboy.
venue yesterday, got tickets for us, so it is in the bag. We are going.
Yeah. Skipped the internet resellers.
Oh God.
Tried to.
But
Stood
so
in line, like old school.
So to kind of back up a little bit, you know, those of the listeners that know us are familiar with our love for Tool and at least have some idea of what it is because we've at some point or another forced you to listen to at least one song. But for anyone that's not super familiar with it, Tool's been around since the early 90s, so you've probably heard of it. But I think there's a really big common misconception about what kind of music Tool is. People think of Tool as this like heavy metal headbanger thing. If you've not listened to it, it gets lumped into that category.
I hear metal a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has elements of that, so I don't think that it's necessarily unfair. Because whatever, no one has time to memorize 100 different music genre niches. You know what I mean? So that's fine. It is hard rock. It is metal, but it is nothing like Metallica or Megadeth or Five Finger Death Punch or Nickelback or whatever weird Portuguese death metal that you listen to or whatever. It's just wildly different than all of that. And I don't know of anything that sounds anything like it. Like having listened to it as much as I have, which is enormous, it just there's nothing else that sounds like Tool. Like kind of like McDonald's tastes like McDonald's, not a hamburger. Tool sounds like Tool, not heavy metal.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to speak for both of you, but I think that I probably listen to more like hard rock than you guys do, and I still probably don't listen to that much hard rock, like really at all. So it's weird describing Tool as a fanboy to somebody else that does like them because they generally like jump on the bandwagon of like, oh man, well, you probably love like Slayer and you probably love like, you know, Megadeth and you know 9 Inch Nails. That's the huge comparison.
Yes.
I love Tool. I love 9 Inch Nails. They're amazing. It's like, where did you get that? I'm like, I don't like 9 Inch Nails. Actually, sorry. Like, respect them, but I've just never been a fan of their music, and that's just a big misconception, I think, about how the three of us really approach music and that we like a standard of quality and something that just kind of speaks to us directly. And that is something that we like, not, oh, it's this blanketed genre, so I'm just going to subscribe to it. Like, I don't think any of us really do that. And I mean, with rap or with electronic or anything, like it's not just like, well, I really like that genre, so anything that's in there, like I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, I love Tupac, but I don't love everything from the 90s.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, so Crabtree and I, you know, you introduced us to Tool back when we were 19 or 20 years old, but Crabtree and I had, you know, I listened to more rock than he did, but both of us primarily listened to like rap, R&B, hip-hop, pop music in general. And
we have some bad tastes under our
I will vouch for mine being the worst though. Like just because I had a Nickelback album.
I had a Limp Bizkit album.
I also had that.
Yeah. Right.
And Linkin Park. But when I listened to Linkin Park, I thought I was being like eccentric. Like I thought that was me really flexing my like, yeah, I'm into art rock. Because I listened to Linkin Park, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't Nickelback.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I listened to normal stuff, but then I also listened to like really deep stuff. Fucking get out of here.
I had the R&B covered. It was like Cisco.
Yeah. Next.
Oh my god.
Wifey from Next.
Next, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I remember the most for some reason.
I do have Boyz II Men on my belt too.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, dude, I had a Monica.
Edition. Oh, Monica.
Yeah.
Monica. Oh my god.
Yeah.
New Edition. Had a New Edition album. Crazy.
Might have. Yeah, I might have. I don't remember. But anyway, so yeah, like whenever you introduced Tool to us, and the reason I'm describing all this is just because for anyone out there that's listening that hasn't actually ever spent any time listening to Tool, like I cannot urge you enough that you should. And I want to explain that we all came from that place of skepticism too, or at least Crabtree and I more so probably came from that place of skepticism. And it is far and away my favorite musical act of all time, and always will be, even if I don't listen to it for 3 years at a time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It still holds that place. And so I remember when you introduced it to me, it took me a little bit to kind of get into it. And I think I actually started with A Perfect Circle, which shares the same lead singer, Maynard. But then I got kind of Tree introduced to it, and I remember it took a little bit, but Tree, you kind of started to replace some of that R&B listening time with first Perfect Circle and then Tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I started with Perfect Circle, and I remember the moment where I actually transitioned to Tool. I was listening to APC, and all of a sudden it kind of clicked where I started hearing the instruments kind of like individually, but then holding them together in my mind, and then hearing Maynard's vocals like incorporated with that. It was like, oh, I kind of get it now, because I never listened to rock music where there's a lot of different instruments being played and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I was listening to an APC song, and I'm like, man, this would sound really good if it was like maybe just a little bit harder or more aggressive. And I'm like, I think it's time for Tool now. And then immediately put that in and was like, yep, I get it now. This is great. And then from then on, it was just like no looking back.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to like Prison Sex, or starting with Undertow.
Yeah, I think that was the big one for both of you guys. You guys love Prison Sex. Like,
That's the title of a song, by the way, on the album Undertow.
Oh, it is?
However, to quickly interject, I would also like to add that for the first 3 years that I listened to Tool, I just had copies of burned CDs, right? So I didn't actually have the real albums. I didn't know. So I knew what album titles were. I didn't know track names. I didn't know what the lyrics were. I didn't know who the band members were. I didn't know what they looked like. None of it. And my point with that is that it is just the music that is so good. Like, none of it is the image. None of it is the message. None of it is the edginess or the anything. It's just
an onion.
the music.
Really
it's so good.
It is great as a whole, and you appreciate it as a whole, and you really love it. But if you really want to dissect it and start peeling back layers, like, they are there.
Yeah.
That's what's super cool about it. They're like Easter eggs.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap, this is an amazing reference, or this is a really cool tie-in to something that I had no idea before. I was listening to this song and this album for like a decade before I realized that this like small hidden like sound was here that I'd never heard before. Like, there was a long period, and this was after a lot of listening to these albums where I was still finding things where I was like, holy crap, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so weird, that's so bizarre. And yeah.
Well, and the thing that's so, like, one of my favorite things about Tool is, we complain or lament that we haven't had an album in so long because we're such fans that we want more content. But at the same time, Tool has managed to establish a really unique relationship with its fans where they've basically said, like, you just have to trust us. And we've said, okay. And they've never let us down ever. And so it's like, if this is what you thought you needed was this long to make it, then that's fine. And I don't even care if you weren't working on it the whole time and just started last year and decided, okay, well, now we're ready.
Right.
That's fine, because the albums are also very different because there is large gaps of time. Now, the first two albums come out within like 1 or 2 years of each other, Opiate and Undertow.
Right.
Yeah.
But then Anima is another, I think, 3 or 4 years after that.
Right.
And then Lateralis is 4 years.
Right.
And then 10,000 Days is 5 years.
Yeah.
And then now it's 13 years.
It keeps getting longer.
Right.
The gaps between the albums are interesting because you can definitely hear the change in progression over time, because they've given so much time to, I don't know, think of things differently maybe, or, grow individually.
Yeah.
And that translates into their music.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like every time that they create something, they're creating it from the current perspective that they have, and that's where they draw their inspiration from. Not trying to recreate something that they drew success from. Because Undertow was double platinum, so they already established a good fan base from that. But they weren't trying to, like, now we have a product that we're going to try and sell, so we need to keep maintaining that. product in order to maintain an audience.
Which I would argue is much more the story of like Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And a lot of their contemporaries, like Korn. I mean, now Korn is
poster boy for that.
I mean, actually, Korn has changed their sound really dramatically over time. It's just always gotten more and more poppy and commercial sounding. But it has changed. Like their first album is actually not a bad rock album or whatever.
Well, I mean, I think all of us at some point were Korn fans. I know I was a huge fan. Not you.
I can't say that I was a Korn fan like that. Like I
love the first album. Loved it.
Yeah. Oh no, that's not true. I was a Korn fan in high school when I liked Nickelback and stuff. I was into whatever was current. At this point, I do like the first album okay, but I can't just vouch for it because there's a lot of really cheesy elements.
But it's that idea that like Nine Inch Nails still kind of promotes and that Korn still promotes. I think Korn just came out with a new album, and I think it was called something like Daddy Issues or something. Something that still is reminiscent of the fact that they have issues and they're still trying to work through those issues.
Dog, you're in your 50s.
Exactly, and it's like they've all been self-promoting the idea that the music is therapeutic, and it's like, then your therapy sucks.
Well, we watched
you're
this.
Still regurgitating the same things that you've gone through. Like, you haven't grown as a person.
Well, there's the Blood into Wine documentary where that's about Maynard's, the lead singer of Tool again, his vineyard or whatever, where he makes the wine, and he says in that, someone asks, there's some statement about like the music being different and whatever, and he's like, yeah, if we were saying the same things, then that would mean that we aren't growing and we're not getting anything out of it. So, of course, it moves on and it goes somewhere else, and we're not saying the same stuff because...
Right.
What?
Yeah. Right.
It's not who people are.
I don't know if it was ever meant to be something that was just like, I have a specific emotional problem in my life and I'm going to just like project that. It was always like, what's the underlying issue? What's my perspective? I need to write about that and think about where I'm at in my life. It was totally like, it's seemingly in any way introspective.
For me, and this is far-fetched, so I'll give it that. But to me, at least the first 4 albums represent kind of the process of maturity. So like, I look at it like Opiate is about being angry at like someone else.
Right.
And then Undertow is kind of like taking that anger and like pointing it inwards and being like, okay, well, I'm not, so like, that's a step of maturity. Like, I'm not blaming everyone else anymore. Now I'm mad internally because I have to change me.
Right.
But then like Anima is kind of like learning to let go of that anger. And like, yes, it is you that changes, but like, it's not just through destroying yourself, right? Like, that's still also not the path.
Right.
And then Lateralis is kind of like you've come out of the cocoon and now it's just like connected to the universe in a different way than you were when you were just mad at everyone in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Now 10,000 Days, in listening to that, it doesn't feel like it really follows another step in that necessarily. So,
right.
But yeah, again, I think that's kind of far-fetched, but for me, those 4 albums have represented that to me for a very long time.
No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And it definitely seems super prevalent on that with like Undertow, because Undertow is really dark.
Yeah.
But not dark in a way that's like gimmicky or meant to be self-intentionally like, I don't know, I want to fuck you like an animal, Nine Inch Nails reference there. Like, where it's like you're trying to be kind of dark and edgy for the sake of being edgy because you're trying to promote something that you feel that's an issue that you're trying to promote.
Right.
Where maybe the reason that they keep regurgitating the same material, like Nine Inch Nails and Korn keep doing that, is because they're not really looking introspectively on how to change their perspective and what do I actually do to make my life better, not just how do I find a way to express this. Oh, I found it through music, and that's a very therapeutic, instantaneous gratification, self-expression, and then after it's done, I still have that because it wasn't actually something fulfilling. It was just more of like a release of endorphins, and it was like, oh, that was so great, but I still have the issues because I haven't really addressed those. I just found a way to, like, a punching bag.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's like people always think like, oh, well, if you just give yourself to the music, then like all of your problems go away. Like there's this one-stop solution for being a human, and it's like there's not. Like I don't care if you're Michael Jordan and play basketball at the highest level ever. Like I'm sure there is some catharsis from that, and there is like some benefit to excelling at something at that level. But that dude still has other shit to figure out. Like you know what I mean? Because he's still a person, and so does everyone, and So yeah, but I think that those guys try and like you're saying, sell this image of like, oh, I'm paying, so I have to sell my art, and then it's like, yeah, but like you could still go to a therapist or like get a coffee or like
there's nothing wrong with writing a song and making it an emotional connection. Surely that's sold for decades and centuries.
Personally,
probably,
love it.
Yeah,
emotionally connect with music almost exclusively.
Songs are almost exclusively about that. Every country pop star that's out there now has that ability to write a romantic song about them and their loved one that they just broke up with, and that's a #1 hit. Like that's obviously something that you can do, but these guys are kind of more in the vein of like maybe Pink Floyd, where they're actually constructing it as a narrative and a story that they're telling, and they're expressing themselves through that story and that narrative, not just like, here's an opportunity for me to put down on paper what I'm going through at this moment, exactly, again, punching bag reference, and then just put it out there, and then like, yeah, but you're just going to have to go back to the punching bag 5 minutes from now because you haven't actually addressed the issue and where you're at in this, and maybe that's not your goal, but you're going to keep regurgitating the same punching bag material because that's what you're doing with it,
Mm-hmm.
And nothing against those people that do that. I'm not dishing on like Korn or Nine Inch Nails because they have their own fan base. I just personally don't find that interesting because it seems like it's repetitive, redundant.
And it's very open to interpretation. And I like how they don't really come out and say exactly, what they were thinking or meaning when they created the song. And they allow, that listener the engagement and being able to piece it together however they might see it working for them. And then that kind of helps establish that connection to songs and everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's why earlier I brought up, that I, again, for the first 3 years, didn't know track names, didn't know lyrics, didn't know.
Yeah, what he was even singing about.
Didn't know any of it.
Yeah.
Didn't know any of it.
Didn't know that for years.
Well, I remember when I told you that, earlier we brought up the song Prison Sex. And I remember telling you, were like, so you've been listening to Tool after you'd first introduced it to me. And I was like, yeah. I was like, the third track or whatever is super good. I think it's track 3. Maybe it's 2. Okay. It's Sober is 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Anyway.
Second track on the album, I would have said. I was like, yeah, like whenever, I don't know if I just kind of need a little like boost in the day or something, like I'll put that in and like, I don't know, just kind of like picks me up a little bit. Like, not that it's like not that I ever thought that it felt like a really uplifting song as much as there's an energy to the song. Yeah. And that kind of like was like, yeah, I get a little momentum out of it. And then you were like, do you know what that song is called? And I was like, oh, And then, yeah, you were like, Prison Sex. And I was like, oh. And you're like, do you know what this line says? Which is shit, blood, and cum on my hands. And I was like, no. And then you were like, yeah, you should still, I'm not saying you shouldn't like it. I love that song, but I wouldn't probably describe it as a song that like picks you up when you're down or something.
Well, and the whole album is like that. Like, it's not a reference of like, hey, pick me up. Yeah. I remember a buddy of mine's dad actually really got into Tool, and he was older at the time. He was like 50s, but he was an old 70s rocker, and he like got into Tool. He's like, man, these guys are awesome. I love them. And I remember giving him Undertow, and he was just like, man, that is some dark, heavy stuff. It's like, it is, but you can listen to it on a very surface level and still get a lot of enjoyment because it's meant to be listened to at a lot of different layers, like an onion. Like, you can put it on and just listen to it and have no affinity and no connection to the lyrics whatsoever, and still get complete satisfaction.
That was me for the first 3 years.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know that it was called Prison Sex until I actually went through and looked at the liner notes and stuff like that. But I was just listening to it on repeat in my room, so I didn't know.
Right.
But and that song in particular is such a good representation of what the album in itself represents, because it is about self-internal pain and self-internal reflection and maybe not liking what you see when you look inside, and being honest about that and saying, I need to do things.
Well, I don't know
if be honest with myself.
If you've listened to the extended, they have an extended cut of it that they played live that I found on YouTube before. And the extended lyrics are, I have become my terror, and you my precious lamb and martyr. So it's that it speaks to that whole cycle of you being the problem. Even if there was a problem that someone else inflicted, you still have to not be the problem. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, that's why I say it kind of represents this psychological maturity that I think a person goes through. And not that I've mastered that or something. I'm sure I'm still in that, and probably we all are forever to some extent.
Sure.
Circumstance to circumstance, but
I also like Flood a lot.
Thank you.
Flood is great. I mean, just
so good.
Yeah, being able to, I guess, think that you have made it to a certain degree and then realize that you're completely wrong, and being able to admit that.
Yeah.
In order to move forward.
Yeah. So Flood, for people who haven't heard it, is kind of and I can't cite the lyrics specifically, so I won't attempt to, but it's basically the idea that you're on a place of ground, and then the flood comes and washes everything away, and then you now have to scramble. And so in the song he talks about thinking thought I was safe, thought I had made it to a place that I didn't have to worry about this happening, and then it does. And that's what I was going to say earlier when I'm really glad that you brought that song up, because when you said that Undertow is the whole album isn't really a pick-me-up thing, and it's it's not. That's accurate. But, I assume other people have this experience, but it could be that I'm just a fuck-up. But, things will be going well, and then something happens that's typically the result of a decision I made.
Yeah.
That was a poor choice that led to an outcome that I do not like, or is leading to outcomes I don't like. And I always go to Flood when that happens, when it's I'm getting smacked in the face with a truth now.
Right.
Well, I mean, it can be something as simple and as literal as, my living situation's great. Oh no, my car broke down, or how am I going to deal with that? I'm not as safe and secure as I thought I was going to be.
Yeah, right.
But also mentally, coming to an understanding and a worldview, this is how I see the world. I'm going to interpret it this way. But then still being able to be well, actually that wasn't quite right. Reevaluating that and being able to change again. I think a lot of times, unfortunately, people get locked into their opinion or worldview after maybe they've questioned a little bit, and they're like, that's it, I'm done, this is how I do it, this is how I think about it.
Right.
And it's nah, you can still be wrong sometimes. And
yeah, well, I mean, it basically ties into something I talked about on a previous episode, which is the concept that perception dictates reality. And Tool is actually the, no pun intended, the tool, the utensil, the medium by which I kind of came to know that, it was in the context of my dad had passed away, and I had to deal with that, but Tool was the vehicle that I used to learn that lesson that helped me deal with that situation. You know what I mean?
So many lessons.
Yeah. And so, and Flood encapsulates that idea. I mean, 46 and 2, certainly, probably even more so, but, but yeah, I don't know. I love it. I love it so much. There's so much comfort in just being someone else knew this exact same thing and made a really badass song about it, actually, that I like. Dope.
Yeah,
like,
right,
thank
exactly.
you. Like,
I think that becomes the thing that's his greatest strength as a singer and telling the narrative is that he's trying to like engage you on a specific moment that we probably all share and his way of working through a particular issue, not just here's the issue, here's the things I don't like about it, here's what's happening, and here's the surface values of the issue, and then that's it, and that's what's being described here, because largely those things could probably be related to by a large audience, but to have somebody actually kind of guide you through steps of perception, like, I think I could probably speak for all three of us in saying that we get a huge amount of life lessons from Tool, like,
and it's a constant like back and forth, like you may have a connection to Flood, right? And then go on and years later, you start connecting to other songs, but then come back to Flood at a certain specific moment years later,
right?
And be like, wow, this is still relevant. This is still capturing what I'm feeling right at this moment.
Right.
Yeah, it's the thing about Tool that's always been like a crazy mark of my fandom and like evidence for me as to why I feel really confident in saying that, like, this is my favorite musical performance or whatever you would call it, because it's not just the band, it's just all of it, the whole thing that they are. And it's that maybe not every single track, because there are some tracks that are just like weird, like electricity noises and stuff, but like ions at the end of Lateralis, but
right.
So I wouldn't count that. But any of the like songs actually have all at one point or another been the thing. Like the way I listen to music is I play games and shit a lot, and so I will put music on while I play the game, and there's always a song that I am hooked to, and that's always where I start my play session. So I start, hit that song, and then the album just plays from there, and then loops back to the beginning and goes through whatever. And every song on those albums, on every album at one point or another, has been that starting point for me. Been the one that I'm hooked to. Yes. Where you're like, oh, I think this is my favorite track on the album.
Yeah. I still have a hard time picking a favorite one. Because each time that I find one that I'm like just latched onto it, I'm hooked onto it, I'm like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, because I've been drawn to it at separate moments throughout my life at different times. Like, it's like, this has been the go-to song for like a month while I'm feeling this way.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'll get a connection to another song. Yeah. And then that's it. And it's like, how do you pick one? I don't know. They're all relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like you always have that like definitive moment for, I don't know, some kind of just self-identifying moment. Like, this is the one. This is the one. This is my favorite. This is my possession. And then it's completely like thrown off your feet. It's like, nah, I just like them all.
Yeah.
Really can't just, and that is my opening argument for anybody that's like, really, favorite band is Tool. And I was like, can you name another band, any other band in the history of music that every single song that they've made is good? Because every single Tool song is good. Every single one.
Yes.
There is not a single bad song.
Even
you can't
sober.
Say that about Rolling Stones. You can't say that about the Beatles. Like, all of those really famous bands have crappy albums that people are like, yeah, we don't really listen to those. It's like, Tool doesn't have that. Tool doesn't produce stuff like that. They're not just going in the studio and just going in on a whim and like, let's see what we get. Like, they go through meticulous, obvious years of process where they will rehearse, write, rewrite until they're actually ready to produce it. And it's going to be meticulous, detailed, and exactly what they want. May not be well received, they have no idea, but you can guarantee that it'll be 100% what they want.
Oh yeah, and I've heard them talk about a lot about being able to go through the music and help themselves through the music, and if it's not helping them or they're not happy with it, then it's definitely not going to connect or help anybody else.
Yeah.
So almost having that, well, I mean, it's selfish, but in a good way towards art is, I gotta have it this way because that's it. That's
well, the beauty of art is the individual's expression, and it's like the only way you get that is if the individual commits to being themselves. But if they commit to trying to do what they think someone else wants, then they're not giving you their individual self, which is the whole point of it being cool.
And
That's what's fascinating.
We had touched on it on our previous episode, but we were talking about a book called How to Fly a Horse, which talks about the people that are misconstrued as being prodigies, that they never actually put work into their craft. They were just gifted with talent, and they just produced really well, like Picasso or Mozart or Beethoven, like good examples. But actually, the history shows that they actually did a lot of trial and error and a lot of meticulous work, note taking, going through meticulous steps. And it's like, because to produce really good quality work that you want to feel comfortable with, you have to go to that level. Like, otherwise, you're going to be at some point cutting corners just for the sake of pushing out content, and it will show that that's, to some listener somewhere or to some viewer, it'll show that that wasn't really put together in a well-constructed way. And I think that, for me personally, is what I look for in almost every single form of entertainment, whether it's movies or books or music. Like, Tool has always been kind of my defining model for, like, that's awesome, and I want to find other things that this band has done that, and other things that do it that exact same way. Like, find me an author that creates, a book like Tool creates music.
It's the no compromise.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I would say like Dave Chappelle is like the Tool of comedy.
Yeah, no,
right.
Absolutely. I really agree with that.
So with the statement that every song is the favorite at some point, well, then that also naturally means that every album has been the favorite at some point, right?
Right.
Yep.
So the first album I listened to was Undertow. And so I guess that would have been my favorite at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then I would say pretty quickly, though, my favorite was Anima. Mm-hmm. But anyway, again, and then it probably moved to Lateralis and then Opiate, which is the first one, and then 10,000 Days was much later. But anyway, I'm just curious. Again, as I just illustrated, it's fluid. It's all of them actually, so there isn't really a winner or a loser. It's all great. But I'm curious right now, as we sit here, what would you say when you think about it as your favorite Tool album, and why? Like, what Crabtree? What do you think?
I went through a similar, I guess, progression like you did. Undertow was first. Anima. I think I went probably Opiate before Lateralis.
Okay.
Then 10,000 Days. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can pick a favorite album. I want to say the one that definitely I go to when I want to reflect more and maybe put me in like a more artistic state. I'll go for Lateralis. Mm-hmm. It seems to, I don't know, get me more thought-provoking and more possibilities. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like that. But then, if I'm looking for just some really good energy, and I might just go for Opiate. I mean, it's all depending on like what I'm looking for at that moment, I think. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
What about you, Mish? Do you have an album that you would think is your? And again, we're not saying that the others don't count. Okay, yeah,
It's on them.
Okay.
My least favorite is probably Lateralis, and not that means
Really?
absolutely like
Folks, I just want you to understand that I literally tensed up. When he said that, I actually tensed up.
And it has nothing to do with any of the song. Like, again, every song.
Really? The Grudge isn't good enough?
Every single song that they've ever made is amazing. I love them all equally. I really do. But my specific taste in an album construction is that I don't really like albums that bounce around in mood and different levels of energy that well. So Anima kind of starts off pretty heavy with Stinkfist, and then it kind of maintains that same sound, even though all of the songs sound different. It still kind of maintains that same level of sound throughout the entire album. So I really like the uniformity, and that album for me is probably why I like it. My favorite is because that was the album that I got introduced to, and I like the amount of experimentation that went on from Anima, from Undertow, because those are huge leaps, I think. And you could arguably say that Anima has a huge leap from Lateralis, and Lateralis is a huge leap between Anima. But the only thing that is weird and kind of disorienting for me in Lateralis is that I always get disoriented in the way that the tracks flow in Lateralis. I love all the songs, but the way it like picks up and starts with momentum with like the Grudge, and then it kind of like slows down a little bit, and there's like some kind of weird interludes, and then it kind of gets heavy again, and it gets a little bit softer, like because it changes that dynamic so much. That's why I like it the least. But it has nothing to do with any of the songs. Like, they're all amazing.
So two things I would say. Like, I think that the point you just made is really interesting about the more consistent sound. I hadn't really considered that before, but I think that it's fair that an Opiate song from the album Opiate sounds like Opiate, and an Undertow song sounds like an Undertow song, and an Anima song sounds like an Anima song. And Anima is definitely like they've just matured as musicians, people, artists, everything through those three albums. So, Undertow is in some ways a precursor to Anima, and then Opiate to it, right? But I think Lateralis, I think you're right. I think Lateralis is where you see a break in that consistent sound. But I kind of think that's really, I think it's necessary. And again, I know you're not attacking it, but I think it's necessary to not be Nine Inch Nails and to not be Primus and to not be the same act for 30 years. Like, you have to change in a different direction. And the other thing is that happens in that span of time is that for the first three albums, well, the first 2.5, Opiate, Undertow, and then like parts of Anima, Paul D'Amour, the bassist, he gets replaced by Justin Chancellor, who writes the other half of Anima, and I don't know if it's exactly 50-50, but whatever. But then is exclusively the bassist for Lateralis. And so then, and there's some really experimental bass shit that goes on with him. So there's also that shift as the band makeup just changes, Right. And then one other thing, I've never actually really, I don't know if I've done this. I might have back in like 2007 when I learned of this, but I've heard that you are actually supposed to listen to Lateralis in like the Fibonacci sequence, which is, so you don't listen to the tracks in 1, 2, 3, 4 in the order they're on the album. It's like, I don't know what the sequence is, but whatever that sequence is. So you end up, have you ever done that?
Yeah. So is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, or no, 1, 1, 3, 5, 7, because you add the numbers 1, 1, 3, 5, 8. Yeah. So you go in like that order.
Okay.
I don't know if you're supposed to repeat one.
See, I thought it was already written in the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh.
Well, Lateralis was written. The song was written in the Fibonacci sequence,
But the album itself.
Yeah. So I guess, no, I never actually went through that process of listening to it.
Till track 3 and then track 5 and then whatever.
Yeah, I always just listen to it the same way I listen to all that.
Well, and with
I just put it on track 1 and just boom, let's just go.
Yeah.
Like, I never.
Well, and it doesn't really. It kind of seems weird if that's true because like Parable and Parabola, like those clearly lead in. So if there's a division there, that would be strange because they on the album just fade into one another. So
right. So you have to use one as an intro to the end.
Yeah, I mean you don't have to, but it's very it's just very clear that they intentionally set it up that way. So if you're not supposed to listen to this order, then why would Yeah. So who knows that?
Yeah.
And to be clear, that you're supposed to listen to it in this order is not something that I ever read in an interview with the band or heard them say. It's just some shit on the internet.
Just a bunch of theories.
Just a bunch of Tool stoners or something that are.
Yeah, because there's so many like different theories that have been brought up of like connections that people make in music, that their music specifically, that Maynard has just openly said in like interviews, like, yeah, they're just rock songs, man. Like, don't look too much into it. And not that, I think he's oversimplifying it, but it's just because it's like you can make a lot of things here that maybe were intentional, maybe unintentional, but it's your experience. Like, you don't need to necessarily tell me what I wrote. I wrote it for my own intention, and whatever you get out of it is what you get out of it.
Right.
It's just another love song.
Yeah, right,
just another love song. Well, and that's
hilarious.
That's one of Maynard said that in a concert one time before playing a song, which, to be clear, is not a love song.
I think it was Stink Festival.
Yeah, it might. I think it is actually. I think you're right. Actually, yeah. Wow. Which is about desensitization. So, anyway, to share my own favorite album. So I actually would say that my favorite album is 10,000 Days.
Yeah.
Which it was not when it came out, because as I said earlier, and we talked about it, the albums don't sound the same. So when you listen to Anima and then you go to Lateralis, it doesn't sound like the same. I mean, it sounds like the same band, but it doesn't. Not in the same way that you get from like one Tupac album to the next, which I love Tupac. Right. So it's not that if you do that, you suck. It's just in the experience of Tool, it is not like that.
Right.
Even A Perfect Circle sounds more the same from album to album, right? It's a more consistent, just general theme.
For sure.
But so for me, I would say it's 10,000 Days, which is their most recent album, 2006. And to me, so when it came out, I didn't really like it that well, and but I continued listening to it, because that's the other thing about Tool, and I honestly think this is true of almost sometimes any really innovative but good art, and it's all subjective. But for me, I find something like that, sometimes I kind of reject it at first because it doesn't fit into the box that I wanted
immediately.
Yeah.
But then there's something about it where it's like, but I don't hate it.
Yeah. Right.
It happened with me with the newest APC album.
Oh.
I mean, when it first came out, I was like, I want to like it. It's APC, but man, this is different. But there was just something there that kept drawing me to it.
Yeah.
And I just kind of let the album play through a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was like, I need to listen to this right now. I knew songs. I started going through and starting on different songs, and it was like, this is great. I don't know what my initial reluctance was, but maybe it's just because it's so different and getting used to it, and it's
definitely, because the first time that I got introduced to a new Tool album, like I was a fan and then I was awaiting like its release, was Lateralis, and that came out in high school. So coming off of Anima, which is still relatively heavy but has some prog rocky experimental stuff where they experiment with time lengths and they experiment into like different psychedelic elements and metaphysical elements, like I kind of was expecting that, but the first thing they released was Schism, and it's like that is a complete departure from everything on Anima. Like, it doesn't start off the same, it's not really heavy, like it's led by a bass line, and it's like, I don't know, it was super weird to me to hear that, because it was like I was expecting Anima, because I didn't know that they were like progressing as a band. I had no idea like what to expect of them growing. So my initial reaction was like, I don't know, I don't think I like this like at all. Like,
and you heard
that I'd find a song, and I was like, I like this song, so I'll listen to this song. And then like later, I'd go back and listen to Schism again, and ended up playing it like 4 or 5 times, and be like, this is actually amazing. I actually really love this.
But you hear that a lot when like you just kind of bring up Tool in conversation with someone who isn't maybe quite there like we are. But I mean, like, I liked him up until Lateralis, or man, 10,000 Days was just kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
And you hear that a lot about 10,000 Days.
Oh, my God. It's so weird to meet someone who, like, doesn't like a specific, like, It's pretty good. I don't really like Anima though. It's like, well, how can you even differentiate? Are you even a fan? What are you talking? I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah. But yeah, so with 10,000 Days, like for me, where I've ultimately landed is that I just, and again, I love literally every other thing they've done too, but for me, it's kind of just their masterpiece. And I hope that this new album that's supposed to come out even surpasses that, because that'll be awesome. And the reason I say that is that, again, like, I think there's this kind of obvious progression from, like, obvious isn't fair. There's a progression from Opiate to Undertow to Anima to Lateralis. But I think that the gaps, the leaps or the jumps that they're making get bigger between each one. Like, Opiate is a 6-track EP. And then the jump from it to Undertow is not that significant. But then from Undertow to Anima, there's a pretty big leap. 46 and 2 is nowhere on Undertow. There's nothing like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then, like, Lateralis is way different than Anima. Because you get, like, what are those? There's the last 3 songs, like, starting with Lateralis, and then I can't remember the name of the 2 that come after it. Reflection.
And then Ions. And then,
there's one before Triad. I think it comes before Ions, though. Yeah. But like, because those 3 kind of make one long song,
right?
And like that, their Anima does not have that. Like, right. And so then you get to so it's still this constant like chasing their potential almost. And then 10,000 Days was almost like, and they do, to be clear, they still do chase the potential, and it still does go places that is nowhere else. Like Jambi, The Pot, Rosetta Stone,
right?
Wildly different.
Yeah.
Wings for Marie is different, but maybe you could tie it to like, well, that kind of is like some of the stuff in Lateralis, you know what I mean? But
yeah, right.
But anyway, so 10,000 Days is still progression for them, but it also like harkens back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And it has this like slightly heavier, it's not angrier. So again, it's not really hostility or aggression or a negative emotion as much as it's just force, for lack of a better term. I don't mean Star Wars.
Fun. It seemed like they had a lot of fun making that type of music when they initially started, because that's what they wanted to make.
Yeah.
And after they went through like years of experimentation, they're like, I really do like this sound, and like we're old enough, we've got this perspective.
Right.
Let's just write things and see what comes out. And because it's a part of their personality, they're like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
It sounds great. I love it.
Right.
I don't really care if it's not going in some other different direction. Like, let's just make the music that we want to make and let it speak for itself. So
Right.
I immediately thought, like, wow, this sounds like Lateralis combined.
Yes.
Because it blends those 2 elements.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
And yeah, I absolutely love it. And again, that doesn't in any way diminish my love for the others. And they all, to what, I think Tree, or maybe both of you said earlier, that there's different moods and different moments that call for different Tool lessons, right? So, like, whenever I fuck up and think I might be destroying my life, I need to listen to Undertow, and maybe, and if I think maybe someone else is stepping on the toes, like, I'm going to Opiate and listen to Jerk Off and Hush, and like, you don't censor me, and
right.
But then maybe once I'm like, okay, now I have to deal with it and actually move forward. Like, well, now I'm going to hit up Anima and do 46 and 2 and be like, this is what the process is. Like, it's fine, And then when I want to feel more artistic or euphoric or feel like I'm exploring what it is to be a person, like, maybe I want to listen to Lateralis,
Yeah.
And then when I just want all of it, I go to 10,000 Days, because it's just
like right into
a nice little buffet you've made here for me. we've kind of broken down all the different albums and what we like, our favorites and all that. But the other thing that's really cool about Tool is that, and Misha hinted at this earlier when he said that it's like an onion, and what he means by that is that it has so many layers. So, we talk about it being like it's really well made, it's really high quality, and all that's true. And it's this really progressive and like innovative music, and all of that's true. But it still has a poppy element to it. It still gets played on the radio. So it's still approachable and consumable. It's not math rock.
Yeah.
It's not,
it's not Dream Theater. It's not that level of just like, let's make the most crazy, complex music.
But it almost kind of is still, because if you, to the onion metaphor, if you peel it back far enough, you can find that.
Yeah.
Like Danny Carey uses sacred geometry to set up his drum set every show.
Yeah.
But you don't have to know that, and it only enhances the experience for you to know that if you care.
Right.
And if you don't care, it doesn't matter, and it's not diminished by you not knowing about that or caring.
Or like the lyrics in Lateralis, he writes the lyrics in the Fibonacci sequence. So it goes red, then black in. So it actually is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. So it does go through the entire sequence, and he writes his lyrics that way, so that it follows that sequence. You wouldn't know that because it's just you're listening to lyrics, but if you care to look into that, then it's like, wow, that's super cool that you actually took the sequence and wrote it that way. Like, that's awesome.
I know what mine is, and it might be the same as yours, so it might be not as robust of a topic. But for you guys, what was the first song? And I will start with you, Crabtree. What was the first song that you dove into and peeled those onion layers away? Do you remember? Or maybe the one that stands out the most if you can't remember the first. I mean, I won't go in. I don't want to hear your answer, but for me, it's 46 and 2. That's the one that I peeled back first.
Yeah, definitely.
46 and 2, because of the shadow, interest me. I don't know what triggered that dive into the internet rabbit hole of, what does he mean by shadow or 46 and 2, or, and trying to like piece that together. I think that was definitely the first. And then, kind of understanding the concept of the shadow and the subconscious or whatever. I mean...
Yeah, you want to explain it for what they were referencing?
Well, basically the shadow being the part of the subconscious where, you might say, are you a nice person? And everyone's be like, yeah, sure, I want to be perceived as a nice person. But we also have the capability of being a mean person. Right, so that being like the shadow side that we don't necessarily portray to everyone. So everyone is capable of that. And being able to understand that and potentially embrace it in order to move through and progress in evolution.
Yeah.
What was it, 46 and 2 being like the next step in evolution? We have like 44 and 2 chromosomes.
Right.
So then 46 and 2 would be the next step.
Right.
Through moving through the shadow. I don't know if I just kind of rambled through that. I don't know.
Was that exclusive theory from Carl Jung? Was that?
I don't know if it was exclusive.
Yeah.
For me, I thought it was his idea.
I believe it is.
The shadow is Jung.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, it was that I was really hooked on the song, but I was hooked on the song prior to knowing what the song titles were and all of what the lyrics were. But you can clearly hear him say 46 and 2 just ahead of me. And I was like, how do you write a song where you say 46 and 2? Because what does that mean? Like, just not even like I didn't even know that it would be interesting. It was just like, what would prompt a person to write that? And so then I just Googled it and started looking, and then that it was what led me at least to finding the 44 and 2 chromosomes, and that being the next step. But then the shadow references in the song being a reference to the Jungian philosophy and our take on psychology or whatever. So, you, Misha?
Same. Because I think it wasn't really until that point when you guys actually started looking at that that I did realize that there were layers there.
Oh.
Because I started listening to Tool when I was like 14. And so by the time I gave it to you guys, like, I guess it's stupid of me to say that it was like 6 years later, probably, and I still didn't know any of those things.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. That's the point. That's the whole reason I'm explaining all of this is because there are those layers, but they're not necessary. So the point is you don't have to be the level of fan that we are in order for this to, trust me, add value. Like, it's so good.
And that's honestly, like, what's so amazing about my relationship with you guys is that I do have that ability to talk openly about how crazy obsessed I am with this band. You guys are like, totally get it. Totally get it. And it's like, oh, that's amazing. Like, I don't have to internalize. I don't have to ramble at someone that's like, I'm like, where are you going? Where are you get back here? I wasn't done talking about Tool. They're like,
sure. How disappointing is it, like, when you bring up Tool and someone's like, oh, yeah, I kind of like them. Or you're like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's awful.
Like, that's it?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I've had people walk away and just be like, I don't care about Tool that much. So, and I'm like, how do you not? What are you talking about? Where are you going? Seriously, get back here. Yeah. That's literally happened to me before. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do kind of go off the rails a little bit. But, you know, you can get me going. Like, it is an onion that you can peel back. It's not just like, they're dope. They have some cool tracks. Yeah, like, I could probably use those, you know, words to describe a lot of bands that I do like because they're good, but I don't have a lot to say. But and on Tool, like, how long have we been talking now? Like, I don't even know because we can just keep going.
And on the other hand, like, if you do meet someone new who is there with it, then immediately you're just on that same level. Like, this song. Oh, yep, get it.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. Or they have like a completely different direction they took away from it, and it's like, wow, you got that from that? That's crazy. I was coming from this angle. You're coming from this angle.
Yeah. I can see it now, though. You know, it's like interesting.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to bring up the onion thing and how it did. When you peel back the layers, you do get into, like, I brought up sacred geometry was something that I had no idea existed until I started looking into it.
Right.
Until I looked into it, I didn't know that Carl Jung was a person. I'd heard of Freud.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But had no idea that any of that was out there, that it was a theory or anything or a thought or whatever, you know.
Which led down our own rabbit hole.
Right.
Like, I think all three of us looked at Jungian philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this guy's got some cool ideas.
Yeah. You know? And then like also with I don't know if he was involved before, but I know he did the 10,000 Days cover art. But Alex Gray, who is a painter, does some incredible artwork. I mean, it's some of the most. Similar to Tool, and I've never heard anything like it. I've never seen anything that even kind of approaches what Alex Gray does in his artwork.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And he
embodies kind of their philosophy and like is able to like physically portray that on canvas. Like, it's just insane. Like, wow, that's absolutely Tool.
Right. If you guys have not heard of Alex Gray, you can look at his work online, and it is. I mean, it takes 2 minutes to go to the website to Google Alex Gray art and look at it, and trust me. It's super cool. Mm-hmm. Like, it's Crabtree and I used to be roommates, and when we lived together, he had a big giant, you know, almost took up a whole wall poster that is the Tool cover, the same picture as the Tool cover for 10,000 Days, the album art, but it's an Alex Gray painting. And so when you walked in our front room, you just see this giant wall. It's basically just an Alex Gray painting, but also says 10,000 Days on it because we got it at a Tool concert. I say he. That's how possessive I am. I'm like Gollum with the One Ring and anything Tool merch related. Like, I give my head that. That's fine. Yeah, well, I would say one other thing that I'd like to cover briefly is the concert experience. So the first time we ever saw them live, at least as far as I know, was 2006. And then we went again in 10, we get in 16, and now we're going to go again in 19. I have not been to a lot of other concerts, so it's actually kind of unfair for me to be like, oh, it's the best concert ever, because I don't have any experience, so F me. But it's almost like a religious experience. Like, I literally cry every time. And when I say cry, I don't like sob and like, you know, wail. but my eyes water, and because I feel so overwhelmed by just like emotion because it's so powerful.
Like complete euphoria. Like, it is just like absolute bliss.
Yes.
Like, it's just wonderful.
Yes.
Sounds amazing. The stage setup is amazing. Everything is just kind of like executing on like 100% wavelength and level, and it just feels amazing to be there in that environment.
And they really go to great lengths to put on a good show. Not, I mean, as the band and as a musical performance, they do, but outside of that, because they play in giant sold out arenas, so you can't. It's not like you're in a bar and you can really see them that well if you're not right up there. So they then go through all these great lengths to have this crazy stage production with screens behind them that have who knows what wild imagery, laser light shows going on, the floor panels in 06. I remember it more distinctly now.
Cool.
Yes.
Oh, so satisfying.
So
because they don't like move around. They're all very stationary. They take playing their instruments very seriously.
Justin just sits down now on a chair while he plays. The one we saw him in 16.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of like extra elements that Adam and the rest of them go to great lengths to make it a visual, amazing experience to encompass their work.
Yes.
And one thing that I read not too long ago was with Danny, the drummer, and a lot of bands will play with a click track or a guide track. A guide track being like the track that they're going to play, played at a low volume. They may have it in like their headphones or something so that they can keep tempo with it. Because the tendency when you play live is that you may actually speed it up. So it may sound faster live than it did when you saw a show. Or if you ever saw a show and all the musicians were just completely off and it just kind of sounded clunky and not like the album, you know? Like, Tool does an amazing job of making it sound like the album, but live. And the way that they do that is, Danny was like, we don't even play with the click track. That's how good they are at playing their instruments. They don't use a guide track, and they don't play the click track. They are just that in sync with each other because they've been playing for so long. They can just go out there and just nail it. It's like, that is ridiculously tough to do. Some of the best musicians in the world have trouble doing that. So it's a very huge testament to their skills. I was shocked when I read that. I was like, how the fuck can you possibly not do that? Because it's crazy. It's an industry standard. It's like, just give them a click and give them a guide and let them, play to that,
Yeah.
Nope.
I'm constantly amazed by, like, how it's everything I want it to be all the time. I don't know how else to explain it.
No,
like, the last show where they open with the no quarter, and I'm like,
oh my god. So
you.
I have done a disservice to Tool fans, and we might seem like we're not real Tool fans. We did not mention Salval, which is not an album of new Tool songs in the way that the other 5 are, but it is a live album, and it does feature covers. It has some of live versions of their own songs, but it also features covers that are not otherwise on any album. And those covers are incredible, namely No Quarter, the Led Zeppelin song. Oh my god. The Led Zeppelin version is like 7 minutes, Tool version 11 minutes. And it's 11 minutes of amazing. And what Crabtree was just saying is in 16, they opened the show with No Quarter, and it was astonishing.
And I was like...
To be able to hear that live.
It was just like, because I didn't think they would ever... Because it's not a popular album
track. The other
track.
time, I mean, I was obviously super happy to see any of the songs live, but the only other time that I saw them do something to that caliber that I was like, oh my god, was when they played Intolerance. Because that's one of my favorite songs on Undertow. It might be my favorite song on Undertow. And the fact that they played that, because they never play anything from Opiate or Undertow, the fact that they played that, it was like, oh my god. Well, except the last time we saw them in 16, they did play Sweat and Opiate. They played both of those. So, I mean, to see them play those things live was just amazing. Because they largely do play, like, from the middle of their catalog forward. And so it's like, thank you so much for giving me this experience. I may have just missed my window forever hearing those songs. I'll never hear 4 Degrees. Like, I'll never hear that. I want to hear that song. But...
Six and Leeches.
Oh, man.
I spit.
So good. I just wanted to do it once. Just
one time.
before the show's over, just do take some. He screams super loud, so he's opening his head like, I can't do that song very often, or really at all, because he will just scream himself worse. And he does. Yeah. He's old, mid 50s, so he does a very good job of taking care of his vocal cords because he knows that's how he's.
Usually 2 or 4 months.
Yeah, right. So he has to. He speaks very softly and does all kinds of vocal care.
Yeah, I will say that if you're not a Tool fan, you should listen to them soon today. If you are a Tool fan and you've not ever been to a concert, you are completely missing out on an amazing experience. I cannot stress enough how cool it is. And again, most people we know are not the level of Tool fan that we are, so you don't have to be basically like a Britney Spears 16-year-old girl, which is what we are in the context. You don't have to be that. I throw my underwear at the stage, not a requirement. Just have to. But yeah, and something else that I would say is that we've talked about Maynard quite a bit because he's the lead singer, and so he's the one that most people are most familiar with, and just like in most bands. He's amazing because the lyrics are really, really good and interesting and thought-provoking, but he also does a wide variety of vocal styles in the lyrics, so you don't, it's not just one sound from song to song, from album to album, anything. You get such a variety. And then the other band members, they'll all contribute that same level of quality. So you just get this really, really great collaboration between 4 people.
Yeah, what I was talking about, we were talking about off mic before we actually started doing the show, was the way that they do the recording process is Danny, the drummer, Justin, the bass player, Adam, the guitar player, will all meet in an old apartment that they have. But anyway, they just go there and then they just jam for months at a time until they come up with things that they like, and then they will start writing that down in the process of what they actually want to do the music for the songs. And then they will record studio time, and they will all go in individually. So Danny will do his drums first, Justin will do his bass, and then Adam will do his guitars on top of that. And then after all of that is done, Maynard may pop his head in every once in a while to check in on the process, maybe see what direction musically they're going, but largely he contributes his part of it last, on top of everything. So, and that's not because they don't get along or there's some kind of weird animosity or anything. It's just they trust each other, and they are such a tight unit of individuals that it's just kind of I wouldn't say a job that they come in and clock out, but they know that. They're like, yeah, Maynard will be here tomorrow, and he'll be here for a couple weeks, and he'll do his vocals, and that'll be it. It's not Maynard's going to come in, and I hope he's going to do a good job, because if not, we got a lot of writing on this. They know he's going to do a great job. He knows that Danny and Justin and Adam are all going to do a good job. There's no, I don't know if you're really going for the style that I want to go for, and they may butt heads collaboratively, but really, there's a lot of trust there. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. Let's just collaborate and see what happens.
Yeah. I would invite anyone also to look on YouTube for live video of there's over the shoulder cams of Danny Carey playing drums live in a show, or there's there's one where he goes to some guy's shop where this guy has a really, really fancy, nice drum set and lets Danny play on it. And I mean, it looks like Danny Carey, again, the drummer, it looks like he is running. He doesn't move. Not that he physically, literally looks like he's running, but his face looks like the face of someone who is exerting themselves at the maximum capacity that they can. He is hitting so many drums so quickly, but not just for the sake of I hit a whole bunch and it's badass because it's fast drumming. Yeah. It sounds incredible, and it's impressive to watch. Yeah. It's not him just flicking his wrist and doing some simple line on a snare or something. It's
my brother largely doesn't like Tool, and I'm but Danny really likes that. People that don't even like Tool for whatever bizarre reason they have for not liking Tool will largely just be but Danny Carey is
yeah.
Hands down, incredible.
Yeah.
They all are, whatever.
Well, I know that I can continue talking about Tool for another 3 hours if we wanted to, and maybe we do, but it's probably time to get some lunch or something here. So
Yeah.
Part 2.
yeah. So yeah. Again, guys, if you're not listening to Tool, you need to. If you are listening to Tool and you're not seeing them live, you need to. If you're not listening to Tool, you should start, and then you immediately find yourself in the camp of needing to go see them. So in either way, you should be going to Tool shows. Well, that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you again so much for tuning in. And thank you, Misha and Chris, both for joining the show. Obviously, we are huge Tool fans and can't recommend that you check it out enough. If you've got any comments or questions, you are always welcome to email me at walker@thewalkshowpodcast.com. You can also check me out on Twitter at the Walkshow Pod. Also, you can visit our website anytime which is www.thewalkshowpodcast.com. Again, that is thewalkshowpodcast.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good one.